This is Our Planet Radio.
Well, good evening and welcome to Our Planet Radio Live for Wednesday, March the 6th, 2013. I'm Randy Moggins, and this is Off Planet Radio Live, going out on Off Planet Radio 1 exclusively tonight for the first time. There's a couple of things I got to talk about here before we bring up our first guest. E.A. James Swagger is here with me, always an interesting guest who provides
This is Our Planet Radio.
interesting type information for us about ancient artifacts. Sorry, we had a feedback loop going there. Welcome. How are you? So here is kind of the thing. There's two... Gosh, this is going to be difficult. There are two things we have to deal with tonight. The first is that we have canceled the show with Wolf Spirit Radio. I appreciate the time that I was on the network. Networks are a difficult situation at best. And without airing publicly differences, I will just say that this was a question of separation because of, let's say, the 6 degrees of separation from certain factions that are not compatible with our worldview and our mission. So we've gracefully, I hope, parted company. And the plans for the future right now are a little bit up for grabs, I think. What I plan to do is in 2 weeks, I will announce when, where, and how Off-Planet Radio will continue live operations. We're going to be doing a lot more podcasting and a lot more video type work as well. The second item has to do with something very deep and very personal as far as I'm concerned. And it is to note the passing of our good friend, blogger Chris Neal, who I am told passed away, I believe, on February 12th at the age of 36. Chris spent about 13 months on his website at Clandestine Rage Revealed, basically putting out everything that he could put out about MK Ultra and his experiences in the MK Ultra program. He did not spare detail. He did not spare his interpersonal turmoil. He also did not spare anybody who got in the way of truth, and he was fearless in what he brought out. As I revealed back in December 21st last year, Chris went front forward with the story exposing the cabal called the Idlewild Group, former White Hat Michael Hemmingson, Kerry Cassidy, and a group of people operating as anonymous, cowardly, slanderous, libelous bloggers. Chris did extensive research. He stood behind his research. He went further. And those who want to go over to clandestineragerevealed.blogspot.com can find the evidence there. They can find Chris's truth. Whatever the circumstances around the passing over of Chris, we don't know that. We can't speculate. There are people close to me who are psychics who have told me that Chris indeed did pass over. And that tells me he did not suicide. It tells me that he accomplished his mission. He punched the clock. But the circumstances behind it, we don't know. The cowardly among us prey on the innocents. They always do. And the aforementioned culprits in the cabal behind the two websites that I noted have now been marked in the halls of eternity for the darkness of their spirit for slandering and libeling a person who was a victim of mind control under the auspices of the U.S. government. He's not the first. He won't be the last, but we can hope that what he did in his mission was nothing less than valorous and nothing less than helping to bring this all to the forefront and end forever the tyranny of a government which traumatizes and creates Manchurian-type candidates out of children using black science, sexual perversion, and all kinds of chemical and psychological mind control. Chris may have lived in darkness, but he fought for the light in the time, and he vindicated himself with honor. And his name will be honored forever on this radio program and in our hearts for those of us whom he touched. And so during the break tonight between segments, there will be a music segment, and I will honor Chris in that way. I don't think a minute of silence quite does it. Chris wasn't silent, and I don't think we can afford to be silent either. And I have to say that I'm far more emotional than I'd like to be right now about this, but I'm willing to expose that part of myself nakedly, because I think that that needs to be said as well. And so we move on. We're on another chapter. This is another time. We have a great show tonight. My guest, E.A. James Swagger, is here, and he's going to give us some updates on what he's been up to, updates on his travels to Gobecki Tepli, any latest developments on Newgrange. Second hour tonight, author William Ramsey will be here to talk about abomination, devil worship, and deception in the West Memphis 3 murders. And if you don't know about that, you will, because he is a sterling investigator, an amazing writer whom I've known for about 5 years, and I've done several interviews with him. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but I want to now bring up my guest, who is hardly ever quiet and is so engaging to talk to. On the line with me now is James Swagger. James, good evening and welcome to Off Planet Radio.
Hi, Randy. Thank you for having me, and good to talk to you and your listeners.
It's great to have you back. Your spirit tonight will probably help mine a lot, because you bring with you an enthusiasm that I think is really important. And you've been busy since the last time we talked, which I think was last fall. You've been a busy man. You've been writing, and you've also now got your own radio show. So let's talk about that.
Sure. Yeah, thank you for your kind words, Randy. You eloquently put that my lifestyle and my enthusiasm in nice words there, so thank you for that. Yeah, and people always say to me, I was born in the year of the dragon, by the way, so I have that dragon energy, but I'm very enthusiastic, and people always remark about that, how much energy I have. They just can't comprehend. I work 16 hours a day, but it's not like work to me, Randy. I get up every day, I'm in my office here, and I just laugh, and I have fun, I'm researching the things I want to research. I'm exploring. I'm not on an oil rig now. I'm not in a remote area doing some engineering high-tech job. This is the best time I'm having in my life. Now there is labour involved in what I'm doing, but I set up, as you say, the radio station there, and there's a couple of reasons for that. I wanted to do it for a while. It kind of forces me to talk to authors that I might have shied away from. I explore new ideas that I don't actually kind of want to.
I remarked to you right after you started your radio show, you didn't start at the basement. You went right for the A-list of guests. Share with the listeners some of the people that you've had on your show so far, and give the show information out where they can find this as well. There is a link on the offplanetradio.com website on the right side, by the way, to that.
Sure. Okay, that's a good way to start. Yeah, so the web name, the web page for the homepage for the show is www.capricornradio.com. That's quite easy, yeah? Capricornradio.com. I usually do the show as a pre-record podcast, but they're all YouTube videos, and they're all archived on the homepage. I do guest biographies of all the guests, and as you say, yes, they are A-list guests. And the reason I chose the authors, I didn't want to do a show or just fill time slots every week, I don't do the show on a regular basis. It's like I work with the people I try and get on, and I go, when are you available? And I bag them when I can. I work around the people. I'm up at all hours talking to America and on all over the world, wherever the people may be, so I'm working a weird time slots. That's why I don't do it as a regular feature. To be honest with you, it's quite easy and to get people to get on the show when you do it like that, and you're not working to a time frame every week.
Right, yeah. Yeah, which is actually a lesson that I'm starting to take away from doing live radio for the last 13 months.
Yeah, I mean, that's extremely advantageous. I mean, I've bagged the 10 guests in the first 6 weeks, and Renee Barnett, John Anthony West, Walter Cruttenden, Michael Cremo, Christopher Dunn, Shannon Dory, Dr. Robert Schock, Laird Scranton, Maurice Cotterell, Dr. Carmen Bolter, so big names, and they're all about the historical mysteries that really grab my attention. Ancient Egypt, pretty much I have a genre there straight away. Archeo-astronomy, historical mysteries basically. I also got Dr. Rita Louise, and I just found out that you cover. I got her next week.
Dr. Rita is wonderful. Yeah.
I just stumbled upon your show with her yourself. I didn't know, and it's funny because I'd listened to some of Dr. Rita Louise's shows.
Yeah. She'll rock your world. She's always interesting, and she's the real deal. If there's an psychic intuitive out there, it's her.
Yeah, and my fiance's just gone into naturopathy. So I'm delighted to have her. I didn't know, I've been listening to her shows because she gets some good A-list guests on too, you see, and that's how I've come across Dr. Rita Louise. But when I had listened to your show, I got a different side to her because she's a bit of a live wire, she's lively, she's very interesting. Yeah. She's kind of flighty and chatty, and that's the way I got my impression from just one show anyway. But very chatty and very talkative and very forthcoming with loads of really good, lovely info. So
she's also very deep, and there are some people I know that have done consulting with her and have come back and very positive remarks about, she's the real deal. Because we don't do a lot of psychics on this show. It's not that I don't believe in it, it's just that there's a lot of charlatans out there, but there are some genuine articles, and she's definitely one of them.
You probably don't know this about me. I don't think you do. I don't think I talked to you about this. But my dad's a hypnotist, and he's also a mechanical engineer. He's a strange one. He's like left-handed, so he obviously uses that other part of the brain. He can play musical instruments by ear. Can't read sheet music. He can pick up instruments and he can listen to one song, start to finish, and play it on an instrument that he hasn't even played before.
Wow, that's like being a musical savant.
It's almost like an autistic savant, almost.
Yeah.
But he can just write his first name and his surname and then make a cup of tea. That's about it. He's old school, but he's an Aquarian. He's a genius, I mean, he is my intellectual genius figure, and he also happens to be my dad. That's the beauty. But so this is why I thought that, when I listened, I just stumbled across your show with Dr. Rita Louise, and I'm interested because she's into healing and alternative stuff, and and coming from, this is where I actually got my alternative viewpoint instilled in me, Randy. This is what I got it from my dad, and he gave me books on UFOs, the unexplained. This is what I grew up with. He also gave me.
Awesome.
But he also.
We should interview your dad sometime.
Yeah, he's a crazy one. He's very tuned in. He's been here many times before.
That's like my dad. My dad gave me a book on Edgar Cayce when I was 12 years old.
Really?
It changed my life. Yeah.
Yeah, I should just say, he's a hypnotist healer, but he never actually made money at that. He was given that gift. He went to see a psychic because he wanted to see if the world's greatest psychic came to his town, or near to him, he would find out and he would go, because he wants to go to the best. He wants to know. He doesn't want to talk to some chancer, some riffraff, whatever. He went to one of the greatest hypnotists, and he goes, I want to learn how to be a hypnotist. And he taught himself hypnotism with the tuition of one of the greatest hypnotists in Ireland at the time. And the guy says, nobody's ever asked me that before. He says, well, you never met me before. I want to know. And he's all about the mind. He's all about mysteries and stuff like that. But a psychic told him when he met her, And she was a very well-known psychic. As soon as she walked in, she just looked at him and stood back. And he said, "There's something wrong." She goes, "You have a really good gift." And he says, "You don't use it, and that's a shame." And he explained to me, because she goes, "You're going to meet somebody who's a woman, and she's going to give you the gift to heal somebody from the tools that you have." And what that was basically a healer, where passed on a tradition to my dad. That I'm going off on tangents here, Randy, but yeah, it's important for the healing thing and all I was saying. But he basically took this woman has to give it to a male, and this male has to give it to a woman. And my dad now wants to pass it on. He doesn't do it anymore, and he has approached my fiance about it. I didn't even know. I don't know much about it, other than that when he hypnotizes the person, they wear a cross. Now my dad's not religious, but he uses the tool of the cross. It's the metal touch. It's the hypnotic effect of the metal touching the skin. So he hypnotizes them. The metal touches the skin, and their asthmatic dissipates. The asthmatic attack dissipates when they touch their skin. It's the hypnotic thing. Now, my dad never heard of this before in his life, and he says, "Well, how do I advertise this? How do I heal people? I'm not going to go and set up an office. I'm not going to do this like a career." She goes, "No, you're thinking that they will come to you." And it got by word of mouth, and I grew up with this environment around me, and I'm like, well, hypnotism was there, healing was there. Using that other side of the brain that my dad does on a daily basis. And now my nephew's a left-handed person as well. He's only 5, and all eyes are on him at the moment because he's super switched on. And he's a Leo as well. He's like a little information junkie. He's insane. He'd buy and sell you. He's 5 years old. And he's also left-handed. And he's just he's another version of my dad. But so. The thing is, I grew up with this alternative viewpoint in my face, but I also grew up with this mechanical engineer as a dad as well. He gave me, electronics kits when I was, I had my own radio station built out of my own electronics with complex formulas, designing my own aerials and broadcasting on an FM radio station when I was 10, And that's because my dad fed my education with really expensive electronic hobby kits. And I didn't know. I just said, "Dad, get me a new kit. Dad, get me a new kit." And I felt a bit guilty when I was 18 that I was putting my parents through financial strain. They weren't exactly going hungry now, Randy, but they wanted to feed the little super genius in me, and I was, and I was like, "Get me an encyclopedia, get me this," and I didn't get. I was a kid.
You're like somebody's little kid that they didn't feed riddle into. That they just said, "Boy, he's a genius. Let's not kill that. Let's encourage it." That's awesome.
Yeah, I love my parents, Randy, and there was times I fell out with my parents. I didn't speak for a year over weird situations, and they were very overprotective as well, they were very liberal in one respect, but very controlling in others, and that was part of the learning curve, and I think, I don't know if you ever read that book, a psychoanalytical book, I'm Okay, You're Okay.
Oh yeah, I've read that.
Yeah, well, I finally got to that last stage where it says I'm okay, you're okay, and a lot of people get to the third stage where I'm okay, you're not okay. That's the parents, and they don't make peace with their parents, and that's that adolescent thing, But I got there, and I realised what they did for me, and they gave me an education second to none. For all my academic qualifications, I learned more in the home than I did, in the academic university world. But and I learned a lot there, So in saying all that. That's me, that's my little brain, and I guess the radio show, CapricornRadio.com, it's very much me, it's independent, it's not hosted with anybody, and I know you're going down that route. It's a pre-record, it's exploring topics that maybe I'm not going to write and research about, but I'm knowledgeable about, and I can explore too, and I can delve into some things. I'm looking for maybe some spiritual authors or healing, and that's what Dr. Reeler away is. I'm looking forward to getting her on. Stuff that I'm going to do my own thing with archeo-astronomy and archeo-acoustics. That's great, but I don't have to write about everything I research into, and I've got very many topics. But that's this little Capricorn Radio. It's another facet of my brain, if you want to call it that. But the thing is, I've got some big names there, and you know what the good thing is, Randy? I've had such good feedback on every single show, and they just said to me, they couldn't contain their excitement, and I'm like, these are idols to me. These people are people I grew up with, learning about ancient cultures, I
think part of it too is, you're very natural at interviewing, when somebody can come on and talk about what they're passionate about and they have a host that makes them feel comfortable, that's a real relief, because a lot of people go on radio shows that are either tense or they're being grilled, or it's a stiff situation. So, having a loose radio show with a host who's gregarious like you are, that's got to be flipping awesome for, people who are basically writers.
Sure, and Dr. Robert Schoch's probably, I would imagine everybody would be familiar with him that's on your show. It'd be hard to escape Dr. Robert Schoch, but he gave me such glowing reviews for my show. He really did. And you know what? Because he knew that I dissected his work, his book, his career. I understood it. It appealed to me, and I asked really good questions, because they actually the questions I wanted to ask. I was curious about. I understood it. I didn't just glance through. I read and digested his book before the show, and I read and digested his documentaries and stuff. And I had more questions that I could have asked him, And I even did a book review for him afterwards on Amazon, and he couldn't thank me enough for that. He's actually going to review my book for me too. It wasn't why I did it, but I'm starting to network with people, and they like the questions, they like what way I'm asking them, and I couldn't have asked for that, Randy. I didn't know where I was going with this. I just wanted to kind of network with some authors, bring research to me. Maybe I'll use it, maybe I won't.
But you see, this is actually what radio was supposed to be. We have an audience, and the audience gets to listen in on interesting conversations, and they become part of it, which is, what we try to do by having a chat room on a live show. But really networking of getting people who are passionate about topics, and, the host has to be passionate about that too. So you really actually just locked in on a real natural flow of information. I guess we're kind of talking shop here as two talk show hosts, but hopefully sure. All of that, people get a sense of where this is coming from. I'm curious to know about Gobecki Tepli.
Just talking about Dr. Robert Schoch, he's doing a tour there. It's actually advertised on my Capricorn Radio homepage for anybody who's listening. I'm tempted to go with him. I'm going to Gobekli Tepli next week, and I almost cancelled the trip because he asked me to come with him to go to Gobekli Tepli after the show, and I didn't know. I just discovered just the day before the show that he actually is doing a tour there for a week around Turkey, a Turkey tour, featuring a day or so at Gobekli Tepli. But I'm very tempted to cancel, but I'm going there next week, so I haven't gone to Gobekli Tepli yet. I know I was supposed to go early March, but so yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. I guess I'm not really going to write much about that. It could be a throwaway line in a book. I just want to go see that place. That's a personal thing to me, because I want to go and see this. It's now the officially most ancient monument we have, on the planet, and it's the daddy, it's the granddaddy of them all, it's the earliest record of civilization, and I talked about that last time, and it's megaliths as well. It's my stuff, so
yeah. Is there somebody who's controlling that site right now? I believe there is.
Klaus Schmidt is in charge of that. Yeah. He's a German archaeologist. He's been there from day one, and it's a very slow process. They're only uncovered about 5% of it. And I had a good chat with Robert Schoch about that, Dr. Robert Schoch, we should say. And you should get him on your show. I did recommend you.
Yeah, I actually have his contact information. And Shannon Dory's going to be coming on very soon as well. I think I'm going to do an interview with her very soon.
Yeah. It's funny actually, because Laird Scranton is another Dogon author as well, and equally Shannon Dory, who's a prolific Dogon researcher, and so is Laird Scranton. There's only a handful of these people. Right, I'm not even. Yeah. I have write about the Dogon, but I'm not a Dogon researcher.
Well, these are the children of Robert Temple, which is, like I've said before, Robert Temple was my touchstone. When I read Robert Temple, a lot of things that I believed and understood that I knew intuitively started to make sense to me. And I know some of Temple's research over the years has been brought into question. In fact, some people have tried to bring it into disrepute. But you can't really get around the fact that Temple predicted some things in his books that actually came to be about Sirius, and that he made connections that allowed the rest of us to go forward and do the kind of research into extraterrestrial and UFO research.
Sure. You know, I can actually tell you where I was at when the time I first read the cover of that book. I've got a partially photographic memory. I have a little artistic trait like my dad. I actually was put down for having Asperger's and bipolar when I was a kid, but I do have a really high latency, and I do have a partially photographic memory, but it's experiential memory. It's not like I look at something and take a still shot. It's not like that. If I like the experience, I'll remember it to the detail. But I can tell you, I was in a library, I was in Cornwall in Penzance, it was a Tuesday afternoon, it was 4:30, and I know those details for all specific reasons, and I remember there because the library was closing. I remember the name of the street, I remember it was a Tuesday because I had a dentist thing the next day, and I can relive that memory around it. And I pulled that thing off the shelf and I just read the Sirius Mystery, and I went, what the hell is that? And I looked at the cover and I turned it over and I read it, and I went, my jaw dropped, and I went, thank God we have some weird aspect that is just mind-boggling and can be proved like that. You know, it can't be poo-pooed away. This thing cannot be poo-pooed away.
What year did you read that? What year did you read that, James?
Oh, that was going back to... I can't even remember the year. I can tell you the day of the week, but I can't tell you the year that was. It would have been about 2001. Okay. Yeah, because I left Cornwall about a year after that. I can probably get... that's strange, isn't it? I can tell you the day of the week and I can't tell you the year. I can tell you the time of day and all. But yeah,
I left, do understand that.
I think I left Cornwall about a year and a half, 2 years after that, and went back to Denmark. But yeah, so that would have been 2001 for me. So yeah, relatively recent time, so... But yeah, I mean, let's just talk to Dogon. I mean, I've wrote about the Dogon. This I should say, my second book, my sequel, Randy, is called the Newgrange Acoustics Mystery, and I never envisaged it was going to be this good. I mean, I couldn't have wished for a better sequel. I didn't even know I was going to write a sequel. I was very aware of this acoustics element to the Passage Graves when I was writing and researching the archeo-astronomy details of the Passage Graves. Now, I've also uncovered more Dogon research, which is why I'm telling you this as well. And I'm having to go into a bit more Dogon research, and it's just so happened that that's the reason I got Laird Scranton and Shannon Doherty on the show, because they're prolific Dogon researchers. They go in different directions. That's true. Shannon Doherty would go down the biological genetic engineering route, and Laird Scranton would go down the symbology route, and tying in the Dogon with ancient Egypt. But like I've uncovered. I loosely mentioned it. I wanted to be an archaeoastronomy book at the start, but I'm going into a bit more of the mythology in this book. I still don't class myself as a Dogon researcher. I would need to spend a few years at it, to be honest, because it's such a complex, advanced technological mythology stroke religion. But put it like this, I've got more symbology that's linked up. The mythology, again, I could go into specifics, but only having read Laird's work, to get Laird on the show, I just bought his 5 books, and read them within a week before I got him on the show. So I just consumed his work before the show, and I do that. I'd read a book a day.
That's actually a great way to prepare for a guest, is just mainline their entire over.
Yeah, I probably didn't need to do that. I really didn't.
Yeah, that's overkill, but I would expect that you would be excessive about that, James. Yeah,
I do lead an excessive. My fiance calls me an extremophile. Actually, I do everything to an extreme limit, But I suppose I didn't need to do that. But the thing is, it benefited me, because. And I had a good chat with Laird after the show, and he's asked me, if I need any help, come at him with the mythology and he'll help me out, So that's a good thing. I didn't envisage that. I just don't know where this is going. I just know that I'm doing something very, very right at the moment, and the formula is working. But just on the Newgrange Acoustics book, you're going to love this, Randy, because I've just finished some research and I had to put that stuff on the shelf. I was aware of the acoustics element when I was doing the astronomy. So being a very efficient engineer, okay, I said, right, I'm not going to go around all these passage graves again and start making acoustics measurements. I says, I'll take the acoustic measurements when I'm here doing the astronomy, okay, and I'll put it on the shelf, and I think there's something to write about. At least I have it done, yeah? A bit of extra labour. I didn't know where I was going with it at the time, and I thought it was a fruitless effort, like, you know. What I didn't realise at the time was it was starting to develop for me alongside the astronomy, and I just realised it was important what I was doing to do it, put it on the shelf, and, you know, by the time I finished writing the book, I realised there's archeo-acoustics is the route I had to go down. I'd already researched archeo-acoustics of pyramids, Malta Temple, the Mayan as well, like for some historical mysteries magazines that I wrote.
Now, for the uninformed, explain exactly what this archeo-acoustics is about, James.
Okay, you got astronomy and archaeology put together for the mongrel science of archaeoastronomy. Similarly, acoustics in ancient contexts and archaeology put together is a mongrel science of archeo-acoustics. It's basically the study of sound-based phenomena in archaeological contexts, if that makes sense. So basically, Stone Age acoustics, if you want to call it that, yeah? It's only one facet of it now. I've actually gone in the Newgrange Acoustics Mystery. At the start, I've actually done a whole section on archeo-acoustics as a science. I've gone into Greek amphitheatres. Basically, there's amphitheatres, and this is a mainstream way into explaining archaeoacoustics and how it came about. So you got Greek acoustics of these ancient amphitheatres being very advanced. I mean, you can hear like a voice on a stage like 70 meters away, you know, very advanced, like, and there's a reason for that. The seats have a corrugated ridged effect. There's one, the Epidaurus Theatre in particular. So I went into Greek amphitheatres and I wanted to show why there's a necessity for archaeoacoustics. But archaeoacoustics of the Greek amphitheatres were considered to be an accidental design. They didn't know, quote, apparently they were not as advanced as we think we were, and they didn't know they designed it that way and it was an accidental design. And I don't think that's right to apply that to every instant of archaeoacoustics. I think it was a deliberate design of the Greek, but that's a matter of to the reader, like, you know, to the researcher, like. So, you know, there's reasons why you need archaeoacoustics. Now there's also Stonehenge. Stonehenge has been, you know, serious wealth of research done on the acoustics of Stonehenge. And likewise, the Neolithic, Avebury Circle, anything in the Neolithic, passage graves, stone circles, Stonehenge, you know, these places have weird acoustic design elements incorporated into the structure, which is probably, if you ask me to weigh it up, is as advanced as the astronomy. Now, I actually mentioned in the Newgrange Sirius Mystery first and foremost that I was aware of this, and the reason I was aware of this was because of something rock art called Antarctic Phenomena. And Antarctic Phenomena is something that's associated with altered states of consciousness. Basically, you got symbols that you see in your cerebral cortex, in your mind's eye. As you go into altered states of consciousness, they would be chevrons, little inverted V's. You'd have concentric circles, semicircles, spirals. You'd have all these weird symbols. So there's two types of rock art. There's one that's based on astronomy calculations and astronomy based, and you've got this other rock art. Now, the question is, okay, the Antarctic Phenomena, the rock art, tells you they were going into altered states of consciousness. How did they get into altered states of consciousness? Were they doing hallucinogens, or were they doing it through the acoustics route, which I'll explain in a minute? Or there's other methods like rhythmic dancing, transcendental kind of rhythmic dancing, music, auditory. There's going into acoustics chambers can induce altered states of consciousness. You can do it through extreme fatigue. In the San rock art is in South Africa, their tribes march around and do rhythmic dancing around a fire for like 24 hours and collapse with fatigue and go into altered states of consciousness like that way. There's many ways to do it. Like the trip's all the same, like, yeah, just different vehicles. Like. The end result's the same. So my question was, explain this Antarctic phenomena, and it's not been heavily addressed, and it's not been put together in an advanced culture type element. Yeah, you know, people coming in and having pot shots at the Antarctic Phenomena rock art and having pot shots at the altered states of consciousness, and they're having pot shots at the astronomy. Nobody's putting this all together in terms of one culture, yeah, being advanced and doing all these multifaceted tasks. Like, that's the way I'm coming at it from the other way, trying to put it all together. Start with the science, the data, and eliminate some of the mystery on the way. So let's just talk some of the acoustics of inside the Passage Grave.
Yeah.
You've been you're a musician, or you love your music, don't you? Right?
Oh yeah. And I'm big on acoustics. I played mostly acoustic instruments.
Right. Well, you're going to love this book, right? You really are, because what I've uncovered is astounding. For first and foremost, if you see the heavens over long periods of time, and you see constellations, winter and summer and solstices and all, you can understand how they can figure that stuff out. There's a natural progression there. You give them enough time and watch the heavens, they can see how they decoded some of these long cycles. But the acoustics is a mystery, because the evidence is high. First and foremost, how did these guys discover advanced acoustics? And it is advanced. There's engineering design features inside these acoustic graves that can only be explained by acoustics. Now, let me explain that. The central passage grave, the central chamber of the passage grave, has a corbel vaulted ceiling. And these recesses to the left, to the right, and to the back, typically there's 3 recesses. They're basically like sound chambers, little acoustic chambers. And the reason I call them that is because there's a special little sill stone on the floor, which doesn't make it any watertight or drainage purposes. It's just a floating flat stone, almost like a little baby tombstone coming up out of the floor. Mm-hmm. And you have to step over this to get into the sound chamber, and there's also a lintel. So it's basically like another room off the main room, but there's a little aperture you have to go through. And it's basically like the sound box on a guitar. You look at a little tiny hole on a guitar sound box.
Right, I was actually picturing a bass trap in a set of high-end speakers.
Exactly, similar process. Yeah. So, and I mean, to have 3 of these, basically, it creates a prime resonance in the chambers. Now, I'm not the first to do archeo-acoustics of passage graves. This has been going on on a various different sites, but nobody's gone around doing all the sites in Ireland. First and foremost, it's hard to get the keys to Newgrange. They just don't give them up too easy. First and foremost, you probably need to be an academic researcher in the field to even get a word in the door. But there is passage graves that I've gone to, and I've carried on research that people didn't do. And there was a very rushed research project done across the British Isles, Ireland and England, and they picked a couple of passage graves and left other ones out. Now, that's not to speak disparagingly of other researchers. It was a rush job. There was finance probably incorporated into that research, and a time frame and all that. But I just seen other passage graves that needed the research done. I carried on the research basically around the year. I explored it and see where it went. I've looked at the design features and explained some of these weird sill stones, and it looks like the acoustics is really advanced, and it's widespread. The art also actually backs up the acoustics as well. I'll get into that in a minute. But this prime resonant frequency is actually in the male vocal range as well. So that would you chant inside these passage graves, it would work in a male vocal range. And then basically, once you seal the chamber door with a stone door, you've basically contained the passage grave to a sealed sound chamber. And it was probably one way of an acoustic induced altered state of consciousness. Now, you also... Sorry, just...
this is really interesting. And I don't want to interrupt your narrative here, but you just said something. Years ago, probably the 80s, do you know that the Grateful Dead played at the Great Pyramid of Giza?
The Grateful Dead?
Yes.
Never.
And what happened there was quite phenomenal. They always had 2 drummers, and they set up this gigantic metal drum. And what they did was the drummers started working these metal drums, and they set up a standing wave.
Awesome. That's exactly the passage graves.
Basically put the crowd into a hypnotic state for about 20 minutes. This is actually outlined in a book on the Grateful Dead. And they commented on the fact that when they did this, the entire crowd of people at once went into this state and they began to move together. They said it was like watching a wave on an ocean, this crowd of people just moving as they set up this gigantic standing bass wave. If you can imagine a sustained standing wave in the lower hertz, the effect that would have, and that was kind of what I was picturing as you were talking about this.
Randy, can I read out a quote from part 1 of my acoustics? I like to put quotes.
Go ahead.
The power of sound to put an audience into a certain psychological state is vastly undervalued. And the more you know about music and harmony, the more you can do with that. Mike Figgis, 1948 to present. I don't even know who Mike Figgis is. I look up quotes to put them into my book. But it's just what you just said to me, basically. To put somebody into a psychological state to the sound of music and an audience, like. You know, it's known. It's a known effect, like. So, but the thing about the acoustically induced altered state of consciousness, you know, there's other ways. There's like also, if you beat a drum at certain like hertz, basically, if you tap a drum 5 times a second, that's 5 hertz. If you can do it 7 times a second at 7 hertz, that's the frequencies that our brains work at. So you basically the acoustic. I actually had a group of 5 people do acoustics experiments as volunteers at these Passage Graves. They also took hallucinogens as well, and I'll go into that in a second. But basically, when you beat a drum at so many hertz, you're dealing with infrasound, a low bass rumble, and if you seal the door, it's all contained. I mean, the effect on somebody inside these Passage Graves, you're inside it's like a big giant experiment.
Yeah, it's a resonance chamber, basically.
But it's one that you can stand inside, like. So basically, your hair stands on end, your heartbeat races, you know, the systems of the body become under stress, like your chest is rumbling with the bass notes, and basically, you know, you'll drop into an acoustic if it's sustained long enough, and it's depending on the internal features of design features of the acoustics, like. You can also be affected by chanting as well, and so you could do infrasound and chanting. So it looks like there's 2 acoustic effects going on inside these chambers. Now, the thing that if you had have asked me around the time I wrote the astronomy book, you know, I'd have just said they went into other states of consciousness with doing psilocybin mushrooms or some other entheogen that was available of the day. There's known effects that the ancient Egyptians took the blue lotus flower and got off high on that as well with a hallucinogenic drink. You know, you got peyote cactus in the Central America that they were known to have taken as well, and they've got weird acoustic stuff going on. So, you know, I would have said it was a hallucinogen route that they took. Then I discovered and developed this whole acoustics thing. I went, no. I had to make a decision in my little world. I went, no, it's not. It's the acoustics route. After my research, I'm actually putting money on it that it was actually both. I think they actually used the acoustics and the entheogens. And the funny thing is, you know, I researched Philip Coppens, the late Philip Coppens, for my first book, the Newgrange Sirius Mystery. And I talked about his research linking up the Hyperboreans going to Callanish and being a black race of people coming from by sea to bring the stones to build the Callanish stone temple. Well, apparently the Hyperboreans were also known to have this magical entheogen drink, some sort of hallucinogenic liquid drink that they made out of some plant product. Nobody knows what the contents were, but again, there's this. I've come back to my first research in terms of hallucinogenic, but I'm also coming at it from an acoustics route. So I think the evidence was both. Now, it took a group of 5 people. They were volunteers. They were basically handed to me like lambs to a slaughter. But they were all very volunteering in the thing. And I just said, are you sure you want to do it? I said, I just really wanted the acoustics thing. But they discussed to do the psilocybin mushrooms. And the reason I got this, I was asked for me to protect, and I said, no, somebody has to keep a straight mind on this whole thing and put the research together. And my reckoning was, let's go. It was a nice little twist on the research, just call it that. You know, I didn't really need to do it. I wanted to do it in the setting, and I wanted to see what people felt the effects of the acoustics on their own first. Then I wanted to see somebody under the effect of hallucinogens. The only ones available to me here are psilocybin, and the volunteers were willing to do it, and I didn't get involved. I had a nurse there as well to monitor. Not that anything would have happened, but there was a nurse there who part of the research team who just was to monitor and take notes of the effects of both the acoustics and the hallucinogen. So then there was a third evening where hallucinogens and acoustics were used together. And it's simple settings. They were the beating of a drum and the chanting as well, like, and using pulses and tones as well, certain frequencies that are the prime resonance of the chambers. I actually had gone around the chambers and measured the prime resonant frequencies of the ones that weren't measured. If they had been measured before through previous research, I didn't feel the need to go back over that again. I did on 1 or 2 occasions, but not all. So I didn't go over doing research that was already done. I wanted to do new research and bring it to the table. But I also...
I'm curious about something. Did you do Did you do acoustic measurements? Did you actually go in and use instruments?
Yes, I hired out acoustics equipment and tested out...
you're going to publish that information? Sure,
that's in the book, yeah.
Great.
Yeah, so, and as I say, I did it at monuments that hadn't been done. I basically considered it an extension of the first book that I read. I think I actually mentioned it on our last show, Stonehenge Soundtracks.
Yeah.
Which is it's mostly like an archeo-acoustics book of the world, basically dealing with acoustics in the Stone Age setting of various cultures. But Passage Graves was a small element of that book, and that's what really aroused my attention, loving the Passage Graves as I do. Now, you know, I'm a fan of Graham Hancock, and mostly for the archaeoastronomy that he's done, but Graham Hancock wrote a book called Supernatural, and it was to explore human consciousness. And I don't know if you've read Supernatural, but it was to explore human consciousness and altered states of consciousness and associated Antarctic phenomena and rock art. Now, when I read that book, I was naturally reading that book anyway because I was a Graham Hancock reader, a Graham Hancock fan. I opened a page on Antarctic phenomena, and I just seen the art at Newgrange.
This is a side of his work I've not experienced yet. I'm going to have to look this up.
Yeah, definitely recommend Supernatural, and I go into the Antarctic. The thing is, the Antarctic phenomena that I read in that book was like a beacon to me, because I just seen art that's at Newgrange, and I went, oh my God, how many symbols are at this? So I looked up the art at Newgrange, and I went, so that's where I'm getting this Antarctic phenomena from. You know, and he's gone into this very prolifically, very researched, highly researched. So, but Graham believed that there's no point in doing the research unless you go and take entheogens yourself. So that's why Graham Hancock went off on an ayahuasca quest, and he also went and took ibogaine as well. Now, I didn't feel the need for me to personally do it, but I thought, let's bring a test procedure to the table. And what I did was I printed off cue cards basically of Antarctic phenomena. Now, I didn't tell the people what I was handing them. A bit like a psychologist card that you would say, does this image mean anything to you? Kind of like that, you know, and it was a bit sneaky, I guess. But after I had done the acoustics and the psilocybins and both together, I showed them the cue cards at the end. And I asked them, did the pictures mean anything? And they go, yeah, that's stuff that we were kind of seeing when we were kind of getting whacked out in an altered state of consciousness, like, you know. So, but some of them picked out different images. Not all. I mean, there was like some of them were there, like, and it, you know, you could have proved this outside a sound chamber, like you could have proved this anywhere. It didn't have to be at a Passage Grave, but it was nice to see the research there, and it's a nice little twist on the tale. You know, and it's nice to see it all matching up, like, and I'm going, like, well, yes, the Antarctic phenomena is there, and yes, the rock art is probably indicative of that, you know, so it's kind of me being thorough, Randy, if that makes sense.
Hey, listen, I know I've only got you here for about maybe 10 more minutes, but
sure.
I'm going to open up if anybody wants to call in and talk to you for a few minutes.
Sure.
The phone number is posted on the website. It is 717-US 717-910-0544. We'll take some calls before we turn the hour. We got to get you back when we got to get you back, because this is like amazing stuff.
I got your attention again, Randy, haven't I?
Oh, you've always got my attention. See, this is cool stuff because I'm very interested in sound, and I'm very interested in acoustic engineering, and these open up. I can't help but think, given what you're learning right now, that somebody can't come out with a bitchin' pair of loudspeakers from this that would actually replicate this effect.
Yeah, I mean, they've actually been able to use sophisticated software to do
psychoacoustic software. Yeah.
Well, when it's actually acousticians that really are kind of mainstream physicists, acousticians that are delving into this archaeological field. And it seems to be a bit more acceptable than archaeoastronomy when it first came out. I was just telling another radio show this evening that there's a BBC mainstream radio program with a very famous BBC science presenter after doing a little piece on Stonehenge. And it's good to see mainstream BBC media doing an archeo-acoustics speech. And it was another radio show host that actually emailed it to me going, I don't know if this helps, but, you probably know about this. I actually know everything that was in the audio documentary, but the point of it is that mainstream's grabbing a hold of this. But yeah, I mean, basically acoustics at Stonehenge has long been known. There's a Thomas Hardy novel called Test of the D'Urbervilles from 1890s.
Right, yeah.
And it talks about the bass rumbling around. It was a known effect that the wind, when it blows around Stonehenge, just a bass rumble comes out of the centre of it. Now you got to understand, Stonehenge was built over two phases, or several phases, 2500 BC to as late as 1600 BC. So it's at the tail end of the megalithic era. But the point is, the inner circle is in the shape of like a parabolic mirror. If you look down upon it, it's like a U-shaped ring of stones, and it's basically like a parabolic mirror, if you know what I mean, like this parabolic effect that would focus the sound intensity outwards. And if you go out away from the center of the circle, you will get audio enhancement, basically. And it's a schoolboy principles of constructive and destructive interference. It's not a very complex, high-tech physics and acoustics effect. It's what you would learn in school, your secondary school schoolboy physics, like.
Well, maybe in the UK. I don't think they're learning that here anymore. I think they're trying to get them through.
Okay, put it like this in terms of your sound technology, right? Let's say you have two speakers, Randy, yeah, and they're both facing.
Sitting here in front of me, yeah.
Right. Okay, you have two speakers and they're both on the wall and they're both facing outwards, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, because they're a certain distance apart. If you take out a certain distance from that wall and you walked parallel to the speakers, you would hear tones that are audibly higher and audibly lower. And if you did it at the right distance, the sound waves, you would actually hear tones of total silence and tones that were really piercing. And you would hear it stop, start in a line. If you did it at the right distance. Yeah. And that's called constructive and destructive interference. And it's the exact same as water waves. That if you see two waves coming in, both of them can make a really big wave, or they can both cancel each other out and make it totally flat, nothing. So it's kind of like that. So it's a simple concept. You can explain it. I have it explained in a diagram. It's very easy to see when you see a diagram, but the key thing is that, there's a rock art at Gavrinis, and I'm off to Gavrinis again. I haven't been there in a while. The last time I was there, it was -6 in January. I had a balaclava on, hoodie tops, Berghaus hiking fleece inline Gore-Tex jacket on, and I was still cold. I was freezing, and I was doing chasing these megaliths. I just happened to be there at that time, and I went, I'm not leaving here till I see some megaliths. But I couldn't get to see Gavrinis then, but I'm going back again, and Gavrinis has got rock art there. It's the most decorated Passage Grave. It's in Brittany, and if you look at the intersecting lines, it looks like they're trying to describe waves coalescing with each other, constructive and destructive interference. Everything about these Passage Graves screams acoustics. Everything about them screams astronomy from the outside and acoustics from the inside. And you're just looking at how much more multifaceted dimensions to these Passage Graves is there. These are such high-tech monuments. But people just see stone, Randy. That's all they see is these stone monuments. And they go, oh, well, just another piece of stone.
Here's something I want to run by you. And you're talking about just stone. I've spent the last year working extensively with crystals and different types of rock.
Really?
Yeah, and it was actually my friend Duncan O'Finian who began teaching me about crystals, and then I began to add to it with highly polished stone that are, some of them are beautiful, they're luminous, and some are blue and some are dark, and I'm still not real good at identifying, but what I've done is I've started working with the energy. And the more that I've worked with rock and stone, the more I've realized we've assumed that this is just dumb, dead particles. But there's something very living and energetic about these stones and these rocks and these minerals.
Sure. Labradorite or serpentine.
That's it. That's the stuff.
Would be a good one for you, Randy.
I've got one. Actually, one of my listeners sent me a gift. They sent me a beautiful labradorite.
It's beautiful, isn't it? The iridescence. I've actually been working with crystals as well. Man, we're so tuned in together. You do.
No, and it's amazing. I walked around with this, and I would take it out once in a while, and I just hold it in my hand, and I do my meditation thing. This became like a centering point for me as I was doing meditation. And sometimes I just pick it up, and I begin to kind of pull energy from it. It's quite phenomenal. I mean, I know this isn't a surprise to some people, but it is to me that I'm learning this.
Here's the thing. I actually use lepidolite quite a lot. Lepidolite, I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yes,
it's a purple crystal, and it actually is what they produce lithium batteries out of. They crush it up and take the lithium element out of it. And lithium they actually use lithium tablets to balance for chemical imbalances, like
right, yeah.
But I have a lepidolite crystal, and you'll probably understand that I'm quite a random, chaotic kind of person in the mind. Like, it's like 1,000 thoughts a second. I'm quite like that, and I use lepidolite. No kidding. But I use lepidolite to calm me down. I put lepidolite under my pillow, and it works
too. Like I said, I would have been diagnosed ADD, OCD, every other alphabet soup type of disorder you could have as a kid. And I do. My brain goes like zoom, 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 zoom constantly.
Sure. Lepidolite's good for that because it calms down on that erratic behavior and it brings balance, and I use that, and it works a dream for me. So yeah, there's different crystals for different things, and I just know that crystals work for me certain times, and so I'm quite open to the whole crystal thing as well. And here's the thing, Randy, you ready for this? The quartz element to these passage graves. I've long since wondered about quartz, and I had a guy on the show, and I got talking to him off the air. He's actually in Ireland now. He's the first alternative researcher that I ever read about, and he gave me an answer to the quartz element. And there's probably a fertility problem in around 3200 BC linked to sunspot cycles, and this is scientifically proven. Scientifically proven that there was a sunspot minimum in 3200 BC. This is why the Mayans started their calendar in 3113 BC when they weren't even around at the time. They started because that was their sunspot calculations. So 3113 BC is when they pinpointed this sunspot minimum due to a long, complex sunspot cycle. Now, there's fertility links to these passage graves, and when I mean there's male and female squatter stones, phallic stones. Newgrange is the shape of a womb where the sunbeam...
you just walked into a question that somebody asked me on the chat room too, so...
Okay, so you got the sunbeam penetrating the Newgrange-shaped womb. The Dogon have weird fertility rites as well, another mythological link. They also worship the cow, the Dogon. Newgrange means in Gaelic place of the white cow. They have curbstones with horns on it in the shape of a cow's head. There's this weird fertility thing that I never understood. And it's only when I realised, when I talked to Maurice, that these quartz actually would turn the electromagnetic light into more magnetic, and that would actually help and aid a fertility thing. And the science behind that is there was research where a woman volunteered to go underground away from the sun for 45 days, and when she did so, her fertility cycle stopped. She had longer days her waking day was like 28 hours long and so many hours of sleep. She had no concept of time. Her whole biological system just went haywire. So when we detach ourselves from the sun, the fertility problems arise. So at a sunspot cycle minimum, these Newgrange type passage grave monuments were probably like fertility clinics. And how they would know that electromagnetic effect of hitting the quartz, you got to understand, they line their passageways with some of these with quartz. There's no engineering reason why they would do that. And there's one of them in particular called Seafin Hill. They went out of their way to cut the rock in two along the vein of quartz so that it would leave a quartz covered wall, like a shiny plastered surface of quartz.
This would be an entire show. It was interesting when I said that, Colorado, this was for you. He asked about the artifacts at Gobecki Tepli of the male and female, where he describes it as an erect male genitalia aimed up above the pelvic area of the female. And I think you kind of answered his question in terms of what you think this is about.
Yeah, and this is the thing. There would have been another sunspot cycle at exactly that time that Gobekli Tepe was built as well. That was another major sunspot.
So you're saying the sunspot cycles were interfering with fertility?
Big time, yeah. I mean, most likely that's probably why the Mayan... there was another one in 700 AD when the Mayan died out. The Mayans probably died out because they weren't producing babies, not because of any cataclysm that people want to stamp a label on it. It's most likely that they dropped in numbers because basically you're only one generation away from wiping yourself out if you can't produce babies, like, you know. But
that's most of the Western world right now.
Yeah, I mean, if we stop producing babies in the morning for 30 years, 40 years, the population of the planet would be gone in no time. Be dramatically dropped.
Interesting. James, I need to get you back when we have more time, because even 2 hours isn't enough, and unfortunately, because of my scheduling faux pas tonight, you got cut short. So I'd like to bring you back. Let everybody know your websites, your radio show, and how they can get in touch with you, because there was somebody on the chat that said they wanted to get in touch with you, and I know that you answer email.
Sure, I welcome anybody to email me. I answer everybody's email in due course, yeah, which is quite quick sometimes.
Yeah, that's like me.
Yeah, but yeah, usually very quickly. It's if you go to jamesswagger.com, that's 2 G's for swagger, jamesswagger.com, you'll get every single site I have linked up there. For the Newgrange Cosmology, for the Newgrange Acoustics book. I usually design a web page for every book that I'm doing. I'm also doing 3 guidebooks this year that are already half wrote and researched. I'm doing them for some tourist links, tours and stuff that I'm doing. They're short guidebooks. I'm not going to publish them, I'm just going to print them, but they'll be all on my web page. And the Capricorn radio page is linked up at jamesswagger.com as well. So jamesswagger.com links them all up. There's ways of contacting me there and emails all there. So please get in touch. I'd love to hear and talk to anybody about anything really. Like. And Randy, when the book's out, hopefully due for release in the summertime, all being well, it's off to the editors at the moment, but I've had it sent back with a few issues and it's gone back again. So I'll get you a copy and we'll come back and do a show with the Newgrange Acoustics.
Well, I want you back before that too, James. I know you're busy, but maybe after you get back from Gobekki, you can give me some more time.
Yeah, well, I'm going to Brittany as well, and I'm also
busy. Man. Yeah,
and I'm also off to Malta.
All right, well, send me a postcard then.
Yeah, well, look, I'm only going 3 or 4 days at a time. You know, it's always short hops, Randy. But yeah, look, I'll come back anytime. Just keep.
Great. Just keep hitting me up on Skype. It's been way too much fun and way too short an hour for me and my guest, EA James Swagger, and you can find all the information at jamesswagger.com. I'll post links with the show. James, thanks for coming on tonight. Well, love you, man. Take care.
Thanks, Randy, and thanks to all the listeners.
Good night. Good night, my friend.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
We're going to take a break here, and we're going to play some music in honor of Chris Neal. And when we come back on the other side, my guest is author William Ramsey, and we're going to talk about some pretty dark stuff that has to do with Aleister Crowley and Satanism and Marilyn Manson and human sacrifice, the West Memphis 3 murders, and we'll talk about that when we come back on the other side of Off Planet Radio Live. I'm Randy Moggins. Be right back.